The sound of laughter echoed through the elegant ballroom. But it wasn't the kind of laughter that invites joy. It was sharp, mocking, and carried with it a sense of cruel satisfaction. Quinn Ellis, with a cold smile on her lips, watched as the wine splashed over Simone Clark's pristine white dress. The laughter came from behind her, her parents, Charles and Vanessa Ellis, barely holding back their amusement. But Simone stood there, frozen for just a moment, eyes wide with disbelief. Quinn knew the game was on. This was her moment. In the crowd, a dozen pairs of eyes flicked between Quinn and Simone, waiting for what would come next. Simone, the renowned CEO of Clark Tech, had been a threat to Quinn for as long as she could remember. Simone had always been the one who managed to step into the spotlight, to draw the attention, to be the one everyone praised for her business acumen and grace. Simone's company was on the rise, and Quinn's family was holding the strings. But Quinn wasn't about to let someone like Simone overshadow her. Not now, not ever. Quinn's father, Charles, let out a hearty chuckle. "You've made your point, darling," he said, his voice dripping with amusement. "She'll know her place soon enough." But Quinn didn't feel triumphant. Her heart was pounding as she watched Simone's face flicker from shock to anger, her hand trembling as she wiped the wine off her dress. The elegant, powerful CEO, the one everyone looked up to, was now just a woman at the mercy of Quinn's actions. And yet, Quinn couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she had just set something in motion that she might not be able to stop. "Quinn, what's going on?" Simone's voice cut through the air, icy and controlled, masking the fury boiling underneath. She took a step toward Quinn, her face pale, but her eyes sharp. This is uncalled for." Quinn didn't flinch. She looked Simone up and down, the satisfaction of the moment pulsing through her veins. "You thought you could waltz in here and steal everything my family has worked for? Simone?" Quinn's voice was low but deliberate. "You're nothing but a puppet, and I'm the one who pulls the strings." Simone's eyes flickered with something fierce, a challenge, a spark of defiance. "You don't know a damn thing about me," Simone snapped, her hands balled into fists. "You're playing games with the wrong person, Quinn." Before Quinn could respond, the tension in the air thickened. The camera crew, hidden in the back, had caught the whole scene. They were filming the aftermath, the humiliation, and they were ready to make it public. This wasn't just a private affair anymore. It was about to explode all over social media, making Quinn's calculated move go viral. Quinn's fingers tightened around her glass, but she couldn't bring herself to look away. She'd done it. She had destroyed the deal, the carefully orchestrated connection her father had made with Simone and her company. $650 million gone in an instant. But as the scene unfolded, the anticipation of victory slowly began to unravel. This wasn't just a business rivalry. This was personal. And Quinn could feel the weight of it crashing down on her. The sound of glass shattering broke through the air, followed by a sudden, harsh silence that swept over the room. Quinn glanced around, realizing that everyone was watching, waiting. What would Simone do now? And more importantly, what would Quinn's family think when the fallout hit? "Hey, I'm really glad you're here. But seriously, be honest. Have you eaten today? What did you have? Tell me that. Your location? And the time. And if you're new, don't just watch and leave without subscribing. It really feels like you're slipping out without saying a word. You're here, so why not make it official? Hit that subscribe button, don't leave me hanging." Simone's composure began to crack. There was a flicker of anger in her eyes, but something deeper was simmering under the surface. For a brief moment, Quinn caught the briefest glimpse of doubt in Simone's eyes. Was it fear? Or was it the realization that she had underestimated her? Simone's lips parted, but no words came out. The weight of the situation hung thick in the air, like a storm about to break. Quinn took a deep breath, feeling the eyes of the room on her. The sight of Simone standing there still, holding on to her dignity despite everything, left Quinn with a gnawing feeling in her stomach. But she couldn't afford to think about that now. The plan had worked. The deal was gone. Her family would be proud. But as Quinn walked away, she felt something shifting in the pit of her stomach, a feeling she couldn't shake. This wasn't just about winning, it was about something deeper. Was this truly the victory she had imagined? Or had she just set in motion a chain of events that would come back to haunt her? The tension in the room was palpable, but Quinn couldn't afford to linger. Her parents' voices followed her, but the world outside seemed to blur as she stepped into the hallway. What was next? The media was already buzzing, and as the weight of the moment hit her, Quinn couldn't help but wonder if she had gone too far this time. The door slammed shut behind her, the echo reverberating through the empty hallway like a gunshot. Quinn Ellis stood motionless for a moment, her chest heaving, her heart racing as the adrenaline still coursed through her veins. She had done it. The wine, the humiliation, the stunning cancellation of the deal, it had all been perfect. But as the silence enveloped her, a creeping sense of unease settled into her gut. She had no idea what was coming next. Quinn. Her father's voice boomed down the hallway, cutting through the quiet. "Where do you think you're going?" She whipped around to face him, her father's towering figure now in the doorway of the ballroom. Charles Ellis, ever the imposing figure, wasn't one to stand down easily. He was the type of man who believed in control. Control of the room, control of the situation, control of his family. But today, something was different. Today, Quinn was the one in control, or so she thought. Her father's eyes searched hers, his brow furrowing. "You made your point, darling, but you've just thrown away everything we've worked for." His voice was lower now, an edge of disbelief threading through his words. "I'm doing what's necessary," Quinn shot back, her voice sharp. The anger from moments ago still lingered in her chest, giving her the strength to face him. Simone Clark was a threat. I had to make her pay for thinking she could waltz in here and take everything from us. Charles Ellis's eyes darkened. He stepped forward, his expression now unreadable. "You didn't just humiliate her, Quinn. You humiliated this family. Do you think you can just toss around billions of dollars like they don't matter? We had a future with that deal. You've ruined it." Quinn's breath caught in her throat. The weight of her actions, really feeling it for the first time, began to sink in. But she pushed it aside, focusing on the cold rush of victory that still pulsed in her veins. "Simone Clark doesn't belong in our world," she said, her voice softer now, but still laced with venom. Charles' face softened for just a moment, but only for a moment. "And you think your mother and I can fix this? You're playing a dangerous game, Quinn. One that I don't think you fully understand." The sting of his words hit her harder than she cared to admit. But before she could respond, the soft sound of heels clicking echoed down the hall. Quinn turned to find her mother, Vanessa, standing just behind Charles. The look on her face was a mixture of disappointment and something darker, something Quinn hadn't seen before. "You've crossed a line, darling." Vanessa's voice was calm, but it cut through Quinn like a knife. "The business, the legacy, it's all connected. You can't just burn it all down because of a petty grudge." Quinn's hands clenched into fists at her sides. The weight of her parents' disappointment hung heavy in the air. She had always wanted their approval. But now, it felt like the very thing she had worked for, had been raised for, was slipping away. "Maybe I don't need your approval," Quinn muttered under her breath, though she wasn't sure if she even believed it herself. "What was that?" Her father's voice dropped an octave, his patience thinning. But before Quinn could answer, the shrill sound of her phone buzzing broke the tension. Quinn glanced down at the screen. It was a number she didn't recognize. Her heart skipped a beat, a chill running down her spine. "Simone." "Don't take that call," Vanessa warned, stepping forward. "It's not worth it, Quinn." But Quinn's thumb hovered over the screen, and with a deep breath, she answered, "Simone." Quinn's voice was almost a whisper, as if she were bracing herself for what was coming. "Quinn," Simone's voice came through the phone, steady but firm. "You've made your move, but this isn't over. You've just played a game you can't win." The words hit Quinn like a slap. Her heart raced again, her earlier confidence shattering. This was the moment she had been dreading. Simone wasn't backing down, and neither was she. "Simone, you don't get to control me," Quinn said, her voice laced with defiance, but the doubt was creeping in. She wasn't sure who she was trying to convince more, Simone or herself. "Oh, I don't need to control you, Quinn. You've already made it clear you can't control yourself. But mark my words, you'll regret this," Simone said. And before Quinn could respond, the line went dead. Quinn stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her father and mother were silent behind her. It was as though the entire world had just paused, holding its breath. Simone's final words echoed in Quinn's head as her parents' voices blended into the background. Was this really just the beginning? Or had she made the biggest mistake of her life? She needed to act fast before everything spiraled beyond her control. Quinn slowly lowered the phone and turned to face her parents. Their disappointment hung thick in the air. Her mother's gaze was cold, but not as cold as her father's. Quinn could feel the walls closing in, the realization that she had just made enemies in the wrong places. "This isn't over, Quinn," Charles said, his voice low and filled with an anger that Quinn had never heard before. "You might think you've won this round, but what happens when Simone turns the tables? What happens when this family's reputation is shattered beyond repair?" Quinn opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. What could she say? Her father was right. She had made a rash move, and it could cost her everything. But she wasn't ready to admit that, not yet. "I'll fix it," Quinn said quietly. "I always fix things." Her words felt hollow, even to her, but it was all she could offer. But deep down, Quinn knew this was just the beginning, and the weight of the storm she had just unleashed was beginning to settle over her. Stay tuned. Things were about to get much worse before they got better. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next part of Quinn's story. Trust me, you'll want to know what happens next. And hey, drop a comment below to let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. The faint sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway as Quinn stood motionless, still reeling from the phone call. Simone's words played over and over in her mind, louder than the muffled voices behind her. Quinn knew she had made a bold move, one that had felt powerful in the moment. But now, the reality was setting in. Nothing was certain. Simone was going to fight back, and she wasn't going to fight fair. The door to the conference room opened, and Quinn's assistant, Kyle, stepped in, his face tense. He looked at Quinn with concern, but quickly masked it with his usual professional expression. "Miss Ellis, there's been a development." His voice was urgent but controlled, his eyes flicking between Quinn and her parents, who were still lingering in the doorway. Quinn raised an eyebrow. "What development?" Kyle hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "It's the media. They've caught wind of what happened at the gala. There's already footage, people are talking." The words hit Quinn like a punch to the gut. "What are they saying?" Kyle swallowed hard, trying to maintain his composure. "They're calling it a public execution of the CEO. They're already spreading the video across social platforms. The hashtag is trending." Quinn's stomach churned. Her heart raced, and her breath became shallow. She was used to controlling the narrative, used to being the one who dictated the story. But this was out of her hands. It was chaos, and chaos was never part of the plan. She glanced over her shoulder at her father. Charles Ellis's expression was unreadable, but Quinn could see the subtle shift in his posture, his shoulders tensed, his lips pressed into a thin line. Her mother, Vanessa, was quiet, her gaze cold, disappointed, but not surprised. "You need to handle this, Quinn," her father said quietly, his voice low. His eyes narrowed in that familiar, calculating way. "Before it turns into something we can't control." Quinn nodded, but inside, she felt a knot tighten. The plan had been simple. Undermine Simone, show her who was really in charge, and eliminate the threat. But what if she'd just made an enemy she couldn't take down? What if Simone wasn't the one who would suffer the consequences? "Get ahead of it," Charles added, his tone growing sharper. "Fix it, or this family's reputation is done." Quinn's jaw clenched as she took a deep breath. Her mind raced with possibilities. She couldn't let this spiral. She wouldn't let it. Simone Clark had already taken the bait, and now it was time for Quinn to finish the job. But how? What was her next move? The sound of her phone vibrating on the table interrupted her thoughts, snapping her back to the present. She grabbed it with trembling hands, glancing down at the screen. It was a new message from an unknown number. The subject line reading, "The truth always comes out." Quinn's heart skipped a beat. Was this Simone? Or worse, had someone from her team already gone rogue? Quinn unlocked the phone, her fingers shaking slightly as she tapped the message. Her breath caught when she saw the attached video. It was from the hidden cameras at the gala, the footage that had been captured during her confrontation with Simone. But this wasn't just the embarrassing clip of her pouring wine. No, this was something much worse. It was a recording of Simone's face right after the wine incident. And it showed Simone speaking to someone off camera. "I'm going to take her down," Simone's voice said, calm but filled with resolve. "She won't know what hit her. I'll make sure the deal's dead before the day ends." Quinn's eyes widened, her mind racing. The trap she thought she had set. The control she thought she had over the situation. Simone had turned it back on her in an instant. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, it was a phone call from her PR team. Quinn answered immediately, her heart pounding. "We need to talk," the voice on the other end said. "You've got an urgent crisis on your hands. The press is about to tear us apart. If we don't get ahead of this, it's going to get worse. Much worse." Quinn's mind raced as she absorbed the weight of the situation. She couldn't just fix this with a press release. The damage had already been done, and the storm was already building. How could she repair her family's legacy when everything was falling apart around her? As she looked up, her father's gaze locked onto hers, and for the first time, Quinn saw something in his eyes that terrified her. Uncertainty. Her father, the man who had always known how to make things work, didn't have all the answers this time. And neither did she. The walls were closing in, and Simone was ready to strike again. The sharp buzz of Quinn's phone felt like an alarm going off in her head. She glanced down at the screen. A message from her PR manager, Mia, flashed across the screen. "We need to act now. This is getting out of hand." Quinn's pulse quickened. There was no time to waste. She wasn't sure what she was more afraid of, the consequences of her actions or the fallout that was already spreading like wildfire. With her father's voice echoing in her mind, "Fix this," she knew she had no choice but to face the storm head on. She glanced up at Kyle, who had reappeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Miss Ellis," he said, his voice low. "We've got a situation. There are already calls coming in from major outlets. They're asking for your side of the story." Quinn's mind spun. "Did they see the footage?" she asked, her voice tight, though she knew the answer. Of course they had. The media was never far behind when something like this happened. "Yeah," Kyle said, nodding. "And it's getting worse. There's a viral video out now. It's being shared everywhere. Across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. People are already choosing sides." Quinn clenched her jaw. It had been a calculated risk, but this was spiraling. She had wanted to put Simone in her place, expose her as the threat she was, but now it felt like Quinn herself was the one on the verge of collapse. "Who's leading the charge?" she asked, her voice cold, though a storm was raging inside. "Megan Gregory," Kyle said, his eyes flicking nervously around the room. "Simone's right hand. She's rallying the press, calling it a corporate bully move. She's painting you as the villain, Quinn." Megan Gregory. Quinn's mind flashed to her. She hadn't seen her at the gala, but the name felt familiar, a shadow lingering in the back of her thoughts. She knew the kind of woman Megan was: calm, calculating, and strategic. And now, Quinn realized she had made a serious mistake underestimating her. "Simone's got her back up, huh?" Quinn muttered under her breath. "Seems like it," Kyle replied. "They're going to drag this out until you crack. You need to take control of the narrative now before it gets any worse." Quinn was already moving, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor as she walked toward her office. Mia's call was waiting. Her heart raced as she picked up. "Quinn." Mia's voice was tight, urgent. "You need to address this publicly. You can't let them spin this against you. We need a statement. Something to control the damage before it's too late." "I know," Quinn replied, her voice strained. "But I can't just put out a statement and hope it goes away. Simone has already played her hand, and now Megan's going to take full advantage. They want to fight, and I'm walking right into it." "Then don't just fight. Outplay them," Mia said sharply. "You need to think beyond the PR. You've got resources. Quinn, you've got power. Use it." Quinn felt the weight of the situation bearing down on her. She had spent so many years trying to carve out her own legacy, separate from her father's shadow. But now, every move she made seemed to put her deeper into that shadow. It wasn't just about the family anymore. It was about her survival, the survival of everything she had built. She hung up and stared at the wall, her thoughts racing. She needed a plan, a good one that would put her back in control and not let Simone or Megan have the upper hand. But how? How could she flip this situation on its head? The idea struck her like a lightning bolt, a risky one. But maybe it was the only way. She could take this from an enemy confrontation to a redemption arc. She knew exactly what she needed to do, but it would require everything she had. Her mind was already at work, the plan slowly unfolding. She could already picture it. A public appearance. But this time, she would show them something different, something more authentic, something that would make the public take a second look, not just at her actions, but at who she truly was beneath the surface. It was time to play a different game, time to show that she was more than just her father's daughter. But the danger was clear. If she failed, if her plan backfired, it would be the end of everything. Her career, her family's legacy, and her reputation would all be destroyed. This wasn't just about saving face. It was about taking back control. But as Quinn sat at her desk, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen, a sense of dread began to settle in. Was she ready for this? Was she really ready to face the world on her own terms? She looked at the phone again, seeing the missed calls, the messages. Megan Gregory was already pushing forward. She was a step ahead, and Quinn needed to catch up. Fast. Just as Quinn began to type her statement, her phone buzzed again, this time a message from her father. "Meet me in my office." Now, the knot in her stomach tightened. She didn't need to be told twice. This conversation could change everything. Quinn stood in front of her father's office door, her knuckles white as she gripped the handle. She had never felt this anxious before, not even when she was younger and had to face his disapproval after failing to meet expectations. This time, it was about everything, her career, her family, and her very identity. She pushed the door open. Charles Ellis sat behind his massive oak desk, his fingers steepled in front of him. The weight of his gaze was enough to make Quinn's breath hitch, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. She had been in control for so long. This was just another challenge. Another obstacle to overcome. "Sit," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. His expression was unreadable, but the subtle tension in his posture told Quinn everything she needed to know. He was furious. But more than that, he was disappointed. She pulled out the chair and sat across from him, her mind racing with the possible outcomes of this meeting. She had no idea where this was going, but she had to make sure she left this office with a plan, not just an apology. "Quinn," Charles began, his eyes narrowing as he leaned back in his chair. "Do you realize the mess you've created?" "I know," Quinn said quickly, cutting him off. "But it's not what it seems. I had to make a statement. Simone Clark was undermining everything we've built. I had to do something." Charles raised an eyebrow. "You think pouring wine on her was the solution? You think making a spectacle of yourself in front of the media is going to fix things?" Quinn opened her mouth, but the words stuck in her throat. She had no defense for the way things had unfolded, no excuse for the way she had let her emotions get the best of her. But the truth was, Simone's rise had always rubbed Quinn the wrong way. Simone was everything Quinn wasn't: outspoken, charismatic, and effortlessly powerful. But now, that very power was something Quinn could never take back. "I didn't want it to go this far," Quinn admitted, her voice quieter now. "But you don't understand. Simone is a threat, not just to us, but to everything I've worked for. She's pushing us out. She's trying to take over." Charles looked at her, his gaze softening for a moment. He exhaled slowly. "I do understand. But you've forgotten the most important thing: how to fight smart. You're too emotional. This isn't about pride, Quinn. It's about strategy. It's about power. And right now, you've handed that power to Simone on a silver platter." The weight of his words hit her hard. She had always prided herself on being the strategic one, the planner. But right now, she felt like she had no idea what she was doing. Everything she had built, the reputation, the empire, her father's legacy, was crumbling, and she had no one to blame but herself. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Kyle. "The media is circling. They've got the footage of you and Simone, and they're already calling it a corporate war. They're questioning your leadership, Quinn. They're questioning your ability to take control." Her heart sank. She didn't need to hear it. She could feel it, the tightening in her chest, the heavy weight of failure bearing down on her. The media was already digging in, turning her once carefully crafted public image into something unrecognizable. She had become the villain, the corporate bully. And the worst part? She had no idea how to fix it. "Quinn," her father said, breaking through her thoughts, "this is bigger than just a business deal. This is about how you handle yourself. You're not a child anymore. You can't just lash out because things aren't going your way." "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Quinn said, her voice cracking for the first time. "I just wanted to protect everything. Protect our family." Charles studied her for a long moment, his expression softening slightly. "Then, prove it. Fix this. And do it the right way." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Quinn knew this was her turning point. It wasn't just about saving face anymore. It was about proving that she could rise above this mess and fix everything before it tore apart everything she had worked for. But as Quinn sat in that chair, a question lingered in her mind. What would it take to truly fix this? Her father's gaze softened as he leaned forward, his voice almost quieter now. "This isn't just about winning a fight. It's about rebuilding trust. You have to show people that you're in control, not just of the business, but of yourself." Quinn nodded slowly, the gravity of his words weighing on her. She had been so caught up in trying to tear Simone down, so consumed with proving her own worth, that she had forgotten what really mattered. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As Quinn stood to leave, her father's voice stopped her. "Remember, Quinn, power is like a fire. If you control it, it can light the way. If it controls you, it will burn everything down." The fire was already burning, and Quinn was standing on the edge, unsure of how much more she could contain before it consumed her completely. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, and Quinn Ellis stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse office, staring out at the city below. The lights of downtown sparkled, a reflection of the glittering life she once thought she controlled. But now, those same lights felt distant, cold, and unwelcoming. The weight of her father's words still echoed in her head. She had to fix this. But how? Her phone buzzed on the desk beside her. She didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. It was Kyle again. The media storm was only getting worse. But this time, Quinn didn't pick up right away. Instead, she let the phone buzz a second time, then a third. She wanted to ignore it, pretend like none of this was happening. But the truth was, it wasn't just the media. The pressure was coming from all sides: her father, the board, the investors, even the employees who now whispered about her behind her back. They were all watching, waiting for her to either fall or rise. She grabbed the phone. "Quinn," Kyle's voice was strained, his usual calm demeanor now laced with panic. "The viral video. Don't tell me," she interrupted, her voice tight. "Tell me how we fix it." "I've been trying to manage the PR side," he said quickly. "But there's more footage circulating. Someone's leaking footage from the gala. They're saying you were stalking Simone. They've got footage of you following her after the wine incident. It's everywhere." Quinn's stomach turned. "You've got to be kidding me." "I'm not," Kyle said, voice cracking. "It's bad. If we don't do something fast, you're going to lose the company's trust. The deal is done. We need to get ahead of this, Quinn. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the legacy." Quinn dropped into the chair behind her desk, her fingers running through her hair. She could feel the weight of everything pressing on her chest. She had made a mistake, a big one. But what if it wasn't too late to turn things around? What if this was just another bump in the road that she could overcome? "Get me Simone Clark," Quinn ordered, her voice sharp. "Quinn, that's..." "Now, Kyle." The line went dead. Quinn set the phone down with a thud, her hands clenched into fists. She needed a way out of this. But more than that, she needed control. If Simone was going to fight, then Quinn would have to fight back. And this time, she would play the game on her terms. The tension in the room was suffocating. Quinn's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, but they all centered on one question. How far was she willing to go to win this? Quinn leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes, letting the quiet of the room settle over her. She didn't have time to waste on regret. She had already made her move, and now she needed to move faster. The idea came to her, as it always did, in the middle of the chaos, a plan to take control, to turn everything around. It would be risky, yes, but Quinn had always thrived on taking risks. She tapped her phone again, checking her email. There, at the top of her inbox, was an email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "We can make this go away." Quinn's heart skipped a beat. She opened the message. It was a link to a private video. But this wasn't just any video, it was a recording of Simone's assistant, Megan Gregory, discussing strategies to take down Quinn, openly plotting against her in a way that made Quinn's stomach churn. The email was clear. "If you want to end this now, you need to act. We have the proof you need." For a moment, Quinn froze. What was this? Another trap? Or was it the leverage she'd been waiting for? The video continued, with Megan speaking quietly into her phone. "We need to destroy her public image before she destroys us. If we can expose her vulnerabilities." Quinn clicked the video closed and sat back in her chair, her thoughts racing. This was it. This was the opportunity she'd been looking for. But it felt like a double-edged sword. If she used this information, it could be her way out. But what would it cost her? The pressure mounted. And Quinn knew one thing for sure. If she moved forward with this, she was committing to a path she might not be able to undo. But maybe that's what she needed, one final push to knock Simone off her pedestal. Before Quinn could process everything, a knock sounded at the door. It was Kyle again, his face pale, his eyes wide with urgency. "Quinn, it's Simone," Kyle said, his voice low. "She's here, she wants to meet." The walls that Quinn had so carefully built were now closing in. Was she ready for what was about to unfold? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next part of Quinn's journey. This is just the beginning. What will she do next? What would you do in her shoes? Leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Let's dive into the next chapter of this wild ride together. Quinn's heart raced as Kyle stepped back, allowing Simone Clark to walk into the room. The moment she entered, Quinn felt the weight of everything hanging in the air. Simone's presence was undeniable, calm, collected, her aura radiated confidence. And just like that, it became clear. Quinn had underestimated Simone. This woman wasn't just a competitor, she was a force. Simone's eyes locked onto Quinn, and for a moment, there was an almost eerie silence between them. No words. Just a charged stare that seemed to measure everything about Quinn, from her posture to the slight tremor in her hands. Quinn couldn't help but feel a strange, unnerving sense of vulnerability. This was the confrontation she had been waiting for. But now that it was here, she wasn't sure she was ready for it. Simone broke the silence with a low, controlled laugh. Well, Quinn. You really know how to make a statement, don't you? Quinn stood, her hands still trembling slightly, though she fought to mask it. I had to make sure you understood where you stand, Quinn replied, her voice steady but her mind spinning. The video, the email, it all seemed like a weapon. And yet the more Simone stared at her, the more Quinn realized it was a weapon that could backfire. Simone stepped forward, uninvited but entirely composed. You think you can just make people understand their place? You think you can control this world with a stunt at a gala and some viral videos? She shook her head, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. I've been in this game for years, Quinn. You're not as clever as you think you are. Quinn felt the sting of her words, but she refused to show weakness. I'm just playing the game the way it's meant to be played. You have your moves, and I have mine. Simone took a slow step closer, her presence nearly overpowering. Here's the thing, Quinn, she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. You think you have control, but that's the mistake. You let your pride get the best of you, and now look where we are. You've made this personal. You've made it about me, and not about what really matters. Quinn felt her throat tighten. What was Simone saying? What mattered? Had she really been that short-sighted? Maybe she had been so consumed with winning that she had lost sight of the bigger picture. Simone's eyes softened, just for a brief moment, but the intensity was still there. This isn't about me, Quinn. This is about you. It's about how far you're willing to go to protect your legacy. But be careful, because when you start fighting for control, you might just lose everything you never thought you'd have to fight for. The words stung more than Quinn cared to admit. Simone wasn't just talking about business. She was talking about Quinn's family, her reputation, and the very thing Quinn had tried so hard to protect. Just as Quinn opened her mouth to respond, her phone buzzed on the desk. Another message, another bombshell. She could already feel the tension crackling in the room, the weight of everything she'd been trying to hold together threatening to unravel. Was Simone right? Was this about something bigger than business? Quinn snatched the phone from the desk, her eyes scanning the message. It was from her father. Meet me at the office. The board is about to meet. I'm bringing you in. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a simple meeting. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for, the chance to prove herself. But with everything she had just gone through, everything that was happening with Simone, Quinn wasn't sure if she was ready to face the board. Simone stood there, watching her closely. I'd love to stay and chat, but it seems we both have bigger battles to fight, don't we? Quinn swallowed hard. We'll see who wins in the end, Simone, she replied, the words leaving her lips more out of defiance than conviction. She needed this win. As Simone turned to leave, Quinn couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle had just begun. She wasn't sure if she was prepared to face the board, or if she could even begin to fix the mess she'd made. As Simone stepped out of the room, Quinn's phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from the media team. The subject line read, "The deal is off." The ground beneath her felt like it was shaking, and Quinn knew that whatever happened next, her life was about to change forever. The sharp click of her heels echoed through the empty hallway as Quinn Ellis strode toward the elevators. Her mind was a whirl of thoughts, each one tumbling over the other, competing for her attention. The message from her father, the increasing pressure from the media, the lurking threat of Simone, and the possible fallout from the board. It was all becoming too much. Quinn had always been able to control the narrative, to bend the world to her will. But now, the pieces were slipping through her fingers, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could hold it together. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Quinn stepped inside, her reflection staring back at her. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. The ride up to her father's office felt like it lasted an eternity, her stomach twisted in knots. When the doors finally opened, Quinn was greeted by the cold, polished walls of her father's domain. The boardroom was already set up, long glass table, high-backed chairs, and the quiet hum of the air conditioning. The weight of her father's empire settled on her shoulders as she crossed the threshold, her every step heavy with the knowledge that everything could come crashing down today. Her father, Charles Ellis, stood at the head of the table, his eyes cold as usual but focused. He didn't smile, didn't offer any words of encouragement, just a sharp nod to acknowledge her presence. "Sit," he said, his voice as commanding as ever. Quinn didn't hesitate. She took her seat, her heart pounding as the others filed in. The board members, the power brokers who held the fate of her family's business in their hands, all took their places. Their eyes flicked to her, but there was no warmth in them, no sympathy. They were here to decide if Quinn Ellis would lead them forward, or if she would fall into the abyss of her own mistakes. "We're here because there are important matters to address," Charles began, his voice cutting through the thick silence. "Our reputation, the company's future, and of course, the recent developments regarding Quinn's actions at the gala." Quinn's breath hitched at the mention of the gala. Here it was. "I'm sure you've all seen the viral footage," Charles continued, his eyes scanning the room. "What's being portrayed is far from the truth. But it's also undeniable that Quinn's actions have stirred the pot in a way that can't be ignored." A murmur rippled through the room, and Quinn's stomach churned. This wasn't just about what had happened at the gala anymore. It was about her credibility, her ability to lead. She could feel the weight of their gazes on her, the judgment already forming in their minds. They were waiting for her to speak, to defend herself, to fix the mess she had created. But as she opened her mouth to speak, her phone buzzed once again this time, a message from an unknown number. "Simone's making her move. You're running out of time." The walls of the boardroom seemed to close in around her as she processed the message. She had no time to waste. Not anymore. Quinn quickly silenced her phone and looked around the room, gathering her thoughts. The eyes of the board members were still fixed on her. They were waiting for an explanation, waiting for her to redeem herself. She cleared her throat, trying to steady her nerves. "I know the footage from the gala is damaging," Quinn began, her voice steady but laced with tension. "But I want to be clear. I did what I thought was necessary. I've been protecting this company, my family's legacy, and I will continue to do whatever it takes to ensure that we stay at the top. Simone Clark, as you all know, is a serious threat. I acted with the best interests of the company in mind. We cannot let her take over what we've built." The words hung in the air, but the room was silent. The board members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others uncertain. Her father didn't flinch, but his eyes were intense. Quinn could feel the scrutiny bearing down on her. "We need results, Quinn," one of the senior board members, Olivia Miles, said, her voice sharp. "You can't just bulldoze your way through this. You need to fix your public image. Your behavior at the gala is inexcusable, and the media won't let it go." "Olivia's right," another board member chimed in, his tone skeptical. "You need to take responsibility for your actions, Quinn. And fast. The trust we've built with our investors is fragile, and this scandal is threatening to tear it apart." Quinn's heart pounded, the pressure building with every word. But there was no time to back down. She couldn't afford to lose them now. "I'm not running from this," Quinn said, her voice stronger now. "I will handle the media. I will address the public, and I will show everyone that I am capable of leading this company forward. But I need your support. I need you to stand with me." The room was still. No one spoke for a moment, and Quinn could feel her father's eyes on her, weighing her words. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Quinn's heart skipped a beat. This time, the message was clear. "You've made your move. Now, it's time for mine." Was Simone finally about to make her move? And if so, what would Quinn's next step be? The silence in the boardroom felt suffocating, like the calm before the storm. Quinn's heart pounded in her chest, each beat louder than the last. She had laid it out there. She had made her stand. But now, she was waiting for them to either believe in her or to finally turn their backs. Her father remained unmoved, his expression as cold and calculating as ever. His gaze flicked over to Olivia Miles, the board member who had spoken earlier. The tension between them was palpable. But Quinn knew this moment wasn't about Olivia. This was about her. The future of the company rested on her shoulders. Her every word, every move, would decide whether she remained in control or lost everything she had worked for. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Charles Ellis leaned forward, his fingers steepled in front of him. "Quinn," he said, his voice low, measured. "You want to fix this? Prove it. Not just with words, but with action. If you want to be taken seriously, show us you can take the reins, not just run away from your mistakes. You have one chance. Do it right." Her father's words hit Quinn like a slap. He wasn't just challenging her leadership, he was challenging her entire approach to the business, her entire identity. It wasn't enough to fight back. She had to rise above the chaos and take charge. He was right. She couldn't afford another mistake. Quinn opened her mouth to speak, to promise that she could fix it. But before the words could escape, her phone buzzed once more. The message from Simone was sitting there, waiting for her. "You've crossed the line. But don't worry, this isn't over. Not by a long shot." Simone had already made her move, and Quinn could feel the ground shifting beneath her. Quinn's mind raced as she glanced at her phone. The message was clear. Simone wasn't backing down. This wasn't just about a corporate battle anymore. This was personal. She had made her first move, and Quinn had unknowingly walked right into it. But Quinn wasn't going to cower. She had already lost so much: her control, her reputation, her own sense of self-worth. She couldn't afford to lose everything now. Not when she was so close. "I'm going to fix this," she said. Her voice steady, but inside, a storm was building. "I'll make it right. But I need time. And I need your support." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time that day, Quinn felt the weight of what she was asking. The board members exchanged looks, their faces unreadable. Finally, Olivia Miles spoke again. "You don't have time, Quinn. The media is already running wild with this. They're calling it a corporate meltdown. We need damage control, and we need it now." Quinn's stomach tightened. This was bigger than just media pressure. This was about her leadership. This was about the future of the company. The board wasn't going to let her wade through this mess. They expected results. "Now. I'll take care of it," Quinn replied. Her voice quieter now, the weight of her words sinking in. "But I need all of you to stand with me. I won't be able to fix this alone." The room fell into an uneasy silence again. Her father's gaze never wavered, but his eyes narrowed as he studied her. He wasn't going to make this easy on her, but then again, he never had. Finally, Charles spoke. "Do what you need to do, Quinn. But remember, what's at stake here is not just your reputation. It's this family's legacy." Quinn nodded. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everything her family had built. Just as Quinn stood to leave, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. "We need to talk. Now, Megan." The message was direct, and the sense of urgency was clear. What did Megan want now? Was this another trap? Or was Simone pushing her to make another move? Quinn's phone felt like it was burning in her hand. She stared at Megan's message for what felt like an eternity. "We need to talk. Now, Megan." The words were sharp, cold, and filled with a sense of urgency that Quinn couldn't ignore. She quickly dialed Megan's number, her fingers trembling slightly as she hit the call button. The phone rang 3 times before Megan picked up. "Quinn," Megan's voice came through, low and tense. "I don't have time to beat around the bush. I know what you did." Quinn's stomach tightened. She had expected the confrontation, but the coldness in Megan's voice still hit her like a slap. "I know what you're trying to do. You think you can tear everything down and take control, but that's not how this works," Megan continued. "You're walking a fine line, Quinn. You've made an enemy out of the wrong person." Quinn's jaw clenched. This wasn't what she had expected. She thought this conversation would be about negotiation, a way to smooth things over. But Megan wasn't playing games. She was ready to go to war. "What do you want, Megan?" Quinn's voice was steady, but the fear bubbling under the surface was hard to hide. "You're threatening me. What's your next move?" Megan paused on the other end of the line. Quinn could hear the faint sound of her breathing, then the soft click of something being set down. The tension between them was palpable. "I'm not threatening you, Quinn," Megan said, her voice almost sympathetic. "I'm warning you. You've crossed a line that can't be undone. This isn't just about the deal anymore. This is personal. And you've made Simone very, very angry." Quinn's heart sank. She hadn't just crossed a business line, she had made it personal. And now, it seemed like the damage was beyond repair. "I didn't want it to go this far," Quinn said quietly, her voice faltering for the first time. "But I had no choice." "You always think you have no choice," Megan replied, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "But here's the thing, Quinn, everyone has a choice. And now, you're about to see what happens when you make the wrong one." Quinn's mind raced, trying to process everything Megan was saying. What was Simone planning? What was Megan about to do? Before Quinn could respond, Megan's voice dropped lower. "You need to decide, Quinn. You want to keep playing in the big leagues? Or do you want to watch it all burn? The choice is yours. But be careful. You don't want to make any more mistakes." The call ended abruptly. Quinn stood there, her phone still pressed to her ear. She had no answers, only questions. The storm was closing in, and this time, there was no way to escape it. The air in Quinn's office was thick with the weight of the conversation she had just had with Megan. She stared at the phone, unable to process the finality in Megan's words. "The choice is yours." The message was clear, but the path forward felt murky. What was she supposed to do now? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Without waiting for an invitation, Charles Ellis entered, his expression unreadable. He didn't say a word, just crossed the room and sat in the chair across from Quinn. His presence in the room made the tension even thicker. "I take it you've spoken to Megan?" Charles asked, his voice devoid of warmth. Quinn nodded, her fingers clenching the edge of her desk. "She's threatening me, Dad. Simone's going to make her move. And I don't know how to stop it." Charles leaned back in his chair, his gaze studying her. "You're in the middle of a battle, Quinn. A battle for control. You've already made your choice, now you need to follow through. But how?" Quinn's voice cracked slightly. "I've done everything I can. But nothing is going the way I expected." Her father's eyes softened, but only just. "Because you've been thinking too small, Quinn. You're focused on the wrong things. You think you can win by playing their game. But you're not just fighting Simone. You're fighting yourself." Quinn's breath caught in her throat. What was he saying? What did he mean? You have to look beyond the immediate battle. Don't just focus on saving face. Focus on rebuilding your foundation. Reclaim control. Not just of the company, but of your legacy. You want to fix this? You have to think bigger. Play the long game. Quinn felt the weight of his words sink in. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. This wasn't about winning the deal, the promotion, or the public's favor. It was about something deeper. Her father had always been the one to tell her how to win, how to outsmart the competition. But now, it felt like she was on her own, walking a path she hadn't prepared for. The realization hit Quinn like a ton of bricks. Her father's advice had always been about control. But what if this time, she had to let go of control? What if, to truly win, she had to do the one thing she had never done before: trust someone else? The night was quiet as Quinn sat alone in her office, the lights of the city flickering outside the window. She felt the weight of the world pressing down on her chest, her mind still racing with everything that had happened. The last few days had been a blur, a whirlwind of decisions, mistakes, and consequences. The weight of her family's legacy felt heavier than ever, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could carry it alone. Her phone buzzed on the desk, and for a moment, she hesitated. She'd already received 1,000 messages. But this one felt different. It was from an unknown number again. Without thinking, she picked it up. "Quinn," the voice on the other end said, and her stomach dropped. It was Simone. "I'm done playing games with you." Simone's voice was calm, but Quinn could hear the ice in it. "You've made your move. Now, it's my turn." Quinn's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood firm. "You think you can just take control like that? You've made your choice, Simone. And now, you'll deal with the consequences." "Oh, I'm not the one who'll have to deal with the consequences," Simone replied smoothly. "You've already made sure of that. I'm not your problem anymore. The media's already turned on you. And your father? He's not going to save you this time. His my can't subscribe news." Quinn's breath caught in her throat. The truth was there, hanging in the air like an unspoken word. Her world, her reputation, her future was crumbling. But this time, she wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide behind her family's legacy. She wasn't going to let Simone have the last word. "Simone," Quinn said, her voice low but filled with determination, "I don't need anyone's permission to fight for what's mine. I'll take whatever comes my way. But I will not let you take this from me." Simone was silent for a moment, and Quinn could almost hear her smirking on the other end of the line. "We'll see about that. But remember, Quinn, the higher you climb, the harder you fall." With that, the line went dead. Quinn stood there for a moment, the phone still pressed to her ear. The coldness of Simone's words hung in the air, and for a split second, Quinn wondered if she had lost everything. But then, something inside her clicked. She wasn't done yet. She wasn't about to let someone like Simone tear down everything she had worked for. Not now. Not ever. She dropped the phone onto the desk and looked out at the city below, her mind clearer than it had been in days. She had played their game. She had been manipulated, taken advantage of, and almost destroyed. But not anymore. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. But as Quinn turned away from the window, ready to make her next move, she heard a knock at the door. She wasn't sure if it was Kyle, her father, or someone else. But whoever it was, Quinn knew that this was the moment. The moment where everything changed. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next part of Quinn's story. Her fight is far from over. What do you think will happen next? Will Quinn overcome Simone's threat? Or is it already too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and share this with someone who needs to hear Quinn's story.